I don't think there's a name that's been mentioned on the OHL podcast more than the name of the guest we have with us this week. So I don't know if that means he's got photos of a lot of people in a lot of places, or I don't know, he hands out checks for gifts, whatever the case may be. Jason Denomme joins us on the pod. Deno, thanks so much for being here.
Hey, happy to be here, Mike. Yeah.
I'll tell you, I mean, I'm not joking when I say that. The number of people who have referenced you at various times through our conversations is pretty incredible, including very recently Mark Mateer, and we'll get into that because he obviously was up in the Sioux when you
Yeah.
were there as well. But I don't think we can start without talking about the really, I think, biggest part of your OHL career for sure. And that was in your first year when you are part of the trade for none other than the Big E. You, DeKoff, Lenarduzzi, and a couple of picks go from Oshawa to Sault Ste. Marie for Eric Lindros. How did that feel as a rookie?
Well, it was kind of a surprise, to be honest with you. Like to make the team was first and foremost my first goal to make Oshawa. I was a fifth round draft pick, and probably, thanks to Bass, I think he took me a little earlier than I was actually rated. So, and then when I made the team, there was about a group of four rookies that basically you played 3 games, you sat out one, you played 3 games, sat out one, and I was doing decent, but I was still sitting out every once in a while. And come Christmas time, the team was doing fairly good, and I was doing fairly good. And then basically the last game before Christmas, they pulled me in a room and said, "You've just been traded to Sault Ste. Marie." So I was a little shocked at first because I'm young, and my father was there, and he said, "You're what?" And I was like, "Yeah, I just got traded to Sault Ste. Marie." And yeah, so best thing that ever happened to me, mind you. But yeah, I was shocked at first for sure.
And at that time too, like, so you're a young kid, you're a few months into your OHL career, and you
Yep.
mentioned Oshawa was doing pretty well at the time. Obviously, that's the year they went on
Yep.
to win a Memorial Cup over your
Yep.
hometown, which is a whole other, I guess, sidebar story. But anyway,
Yep.
you're going from a team that was running really well to a team in the Sioux that was, quite frankly, exactly the opposite. Didn't even make the playoffs that year.
Pretty lean. Yeah. That Oshawa team was great, and kudos to that leadership group there, Ian Fraser and O'Hagan and Craig Donaldson, and that group. Joe Basillo was there too, and that was an awesome group to come into the OHL with. They treated the young guys like gold. So it was a great transition for me to get to know those guys and just to see how the everyday thing works out. You know what I mean? So it was great, and kudos for them. They knew they had something good there, and they went and got it done. So yeah.
You mentioned Sherry Basson, and when he took you in the fifth round, maybe rated you higher than maybe you even thought perhaps you would have been. Was there
Yeah,
any
well,
relationship there?
no, there was no relationship. I was playing for the Green Shirts at the time, the AAA team in Kitchener, and it was my second year playing for the Green Shirts. I played as an underage the year before, and then that summer, after my first year, I made the provincial team, and I decided to go back to midget again. And Mike Wright, who was my coach, who was an awesome coach, by the way, in Kitchener, we had a few conversations, and when the ratings came out, I was always around 8th or 9th round kind of thing. And he said, "You just keep on working." And we went to the draft. I forget where the draft was that year, but we went to the draft, and sure enough, I was picked in the 5th round. So I was pretty happy about that. Yeah.
How hard was it to go as far as Sault Ste. Marie? Because I'm just trying to put yourself, in the position of a 16, 17-year-old kid. It's a different
Yeah.
story now, and you're well traveled being down on the
Yeah.
East Coast. But at that
Yeah.
time, when you're Southern Ontario kid playing still in Southern Ontario with Oshawa, and they say,
Yeah.
"Oh yeah, not only have you been traded, but you're going as far north as we can send you in this league."
Yeah, yeah, pretty shocking, eh? Yeah, I was never there. I was never in Sault Ste. Marie before, so, and I didn't really know much about the town or the hockey there, and other than we were in a different division, so I don't even know if we played them yet. that year. But I think I took it in stride. Like I knew like it was part of the game. And when I talked to them, like when Sherry called me after the trade and he said, you're going to get opportunities to play. And that was good enough for me. Like if I could play, then I was good with it. So that's what I wanted to do. And it worked out great because that second half of the season, when I started playing for the Sioux, I had played with Colin Miller, who was my centerman. And, I got regular playing time and actually pumped a bunch of goals in the second half. So it really was a good move for me. The silver lining is, I didn't win the cup that year, but I got to play. So that was my main thing, that I had no problem with it once I got up there.
You mentioned Colin Miller. One
Yep.
of the guys I reached out to before you and I sat down to talk is a previous guest, Tony Yob.
Yes,
And he
Tony,
told
yeah.
me that he still thinks that the trio of you, he, and Miller was the best line he ever had the chance to play on. Almost instant chemistry. What do you remember of playing with those two
The
guys?
exact same thing, to be honest with you. Like my first year when we got there was Tony, me, and Denny Lambert, who was an NHL player too. And Denny was a great player and hard-nosed and whatever. But when Tony got there, things just started to click. We were putting up some points, and my role on that line, because Colin and Tony were really offensive, and Tony could fight too, but my role was basically be the high guy, make sure we're good defensively, and you know what I mean, and work in the corners and get them the puck. And it worked out well for me too. I ended up scoring a few points myself, but that was an awesome line. And Colin Miller, probably one of the most underrated centermen I think I've ever seen. Like he was just, they had a knock on him for his skating, but he got to where he needed to be, and the plays that he could make is just phenomenal. Yeah, he was a great player.
Does playing with a guy like Tony make you 6 inches taller on the ice too?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I probably fought more than I probably should have, but I always knew that Tony had my back. That's for sure. He was a great line mate. He was tough as nails, that guy.
It's funny you mentioned that. Probably fought more than you should have. When you Google Jason Denomme's name, on the first page of results, I think brings up a YouTube video of one of your tilts. Do you remember the first one you had in the OHL?
Yeah, Mike Jackson.
I think that's the one that's still coming up on YouTube.
Yeah, Mike Jackson. Yeah, that was my first. Well, I had fought in training camp against another rookie, but that was my first OHL fight, and I basically just swung my fist as many times as I could. He was a 20-year-old, I think, or an 18 or 19-year-old, and I don't know if it was a good partner to pick, but yeah, I remember that fight very well.
It's interesting that all these years later, Deno, you can still remember the name of the player you first fought.
Yep. Yeah. It's an amazing thing when you look back at it, how many guys that you come in touch with. And that's kind of the good thing about the OHL too, because maybe the reason why people are mentioning my name is because in the off season you would see these guys or you'd work out with them, and it's like, a little mini NHL. Like they're your buddies off the ice, but once you get on the ice, it's something different, right?
So that first full year for you up in the Sioux, what a turnaround. I mean, Sherry Basson's the executive of the year, and you've got a team that was out of the playoffs the year before and wins the OHL championship in your first full season there, second overall in Sault Ste. Marie. Was there a point in time that season that you kind of realized that something special was going on here?
I think about after Christmas time, like we knew things were going fairly well and we were starting to get on a roll. And, with the coaching staff there and Sherry, they were so good at being honest all the time to make sure we were focused and all that kind of stuff. But we kind of knew that things were going in the right direction. And our young kids that year were great, like Mateer and Bannister and Sean Imber on defense. And we still had other good defensemen there too. And like Footer and Tiley and Bugner. So it was we were set up to know that we would probably go fairly far. Like, it took a lot of work though. It wasn't easy for sure. Like, during playoffs was a grind for sure. And we just, kept on plugging away and had the work ethic to do it, I think, and the drive to do it. And Teddy was such a great motivator. Like, he would, if you couldn't get pumped up after talking to Teddy, then there was something wrong with you. And Danny Flynn, of course, was awesome as well. So, yeah.
When we were talking to Mateer not too long ago, he said the same thing about that run. It's
Yeah.
a grind. And I think we all know that. Many still say the Memorial Cup is the
Yeah.
toughest trophy to win in
Yeah.
hockey. But
Yeah.
did you realize along the way, Deno, that you were on that collision course with Eric Lindros and the Oshawa Generals?
Well, we kind of knew that they, like, coming out of their division, that they were going to be right there. And, but I don't think the coaches never really hyped it up much until probably the finals in our division. And when we knew we were going against Oshawa, that's when things kind of like, oh my God, we're going against Lindros and Oshawa. This is going to be crazy. And but like I said, the coaches were great. They had video, they had all kinds of stuff. And I remember Sherry Basson coming in the dressing room saying, listen, we're not going to drive up there. We're going to fly up there because we don't want you guys tired and on the bus for that long. And so you guys be ready to play. And we were super pumped to be there. It was, national stage type stuff, right? And being from Sault Ste. Marie, we don't really get national stage that much. So it was exciting for us, and we did have a bone to pick. You know what I mean? Like, maybe not as players so much, but the city did, right? So Sault Ste. Marie didn't like him at all, and yeah, we were pretty pumped for that whole series.
I wondered about that because do you remember how the fans treated Lindros during that series when he was back?
Yeah, I do. I remember the signs and all that kind of stuff, and probably unfair to him, but it was just the way that they felt, right? So they felt they were getting shunned, but you know what? He was only going to be in the league for 2 years anyways, right? So, it was a smart move, I think, by Bass to trade his rights and get some other players and take a longer course to get there, maybe.
So you win that OHL championship, and then it's off to, I believe, the Q hosted that year. So the first
city, yeah.
Yep. So the first chance for you to go to a Memorial Cup. What was that experience like for you?
It was great. I think we were gassed. We were gassed that playoff run. I think when we got there, we weren't the same team. We didn't have any fans there because Sault Ste. Marie had just went English only. Took all the road signs off that were in French, so they didn't like us very much. And we ran into some good teams like that Spokane team with Ray Whitney and Pat Falloon, and there were some good teams there. So Chicoutimi, I think, in Drummondville. So yeah, we struggled that tournament for sure. We didn't win a game, I don't think, and I think Spokane cleaned us in the last game 7-3. But we were pretty distraught, and when we got in the dressing room, I just remember the coach Teddy coming in and saying, "You know what? This is not the end. We're not done yet. We got next year. Let's go back and regroup." So, and that's what we did. So
that's incredible to me because, even on my side of this game, I come into a season and it's training camp time and I'm like, oh my gosh, like we're going to play a few exhibition games and then we've got 68 regular season games and then who the heck knows? And I'm just thinking about that as somebody that works in the league. I can't imagine being a player and thinking, like, good on Ted, and I'm not surprised to hear that coming from a coach like him, but I can't imagine what that's like for you mentally as a player. You've just gone through all of this. You went through that grind, you get past Oshawa, you have a really rough Memorial Cup. I mean, can you even get your head around the idea that, oh, we'll be back here in 12 months?
Yeah, it's like, I'm sure he said it as like, you're not done, like, but I'm sure we were pretty upset in the dressing room after. Like, there was a lot of tears and a lot of, like, I don't know if it was tears of just being sad or just tears of exhaustion, really, to be honest with you. It was a lot emotionally to take in. And I think he just said the right things that, even if you can wallow in it for the time being, but you go home in the summer and you say, yeah, let's get ready for next year and take another run at it. So
What was it like playing for Ted Nolan?
he was fantastic. He gets the most out of any player I know. If you needed a kick in the arse, he give you a kick in the arse. If you needed a tap in the back, he give you a tap in the back. He was like that with me. He knew how to push my buttons to get me to play the right way. And when I screwed up, I heard about it. And when I played good, I heard about it. So you can't ask more for that from a coach. You know what I mean? Like, as far as a player's coach goes, you want to be held accountable for what your actions are. And he did that. And he did that everybody. It didn't matter if you were a star or right down to the fourth line, you knew it. And it's kind of a nice feeling, right? It's, I say to my son now, like, if the coach is saying something to you, listen to him, because he's trying to help you. He's not trying to berate you. He's trying to help you. And Ted was certainly like that, for sure.
You mentioned his name before, and I want to talk a little bit about him as well, because sometimes I think with Ted Nolan, he gets overlooked, but Danny Flynn.
Unbelievable. Just a smart hockey guy, could break down other teams, power plays, penalty kills, breakouts, all that kind of stuff. And a super nice guy too. Like, really good guy. He was a good hockey player in his day. I don't know if many people know that, but he was like the leading scorer of the Newfoundland Senior League at one point. Like, he was a good player too. So he knew the game really well, and him and Ted complement each other really well. And it was nice to have him around as well as Ted, because it just helped the whole package really come together, I think.
I think of that now as a group up there with Sherry Basson as a GM,
Yep.
and then Ted and Danny as two of your coaches. I mean,
Yep.
I don't know that it gets much better than that in the Canadian Hockey League.
No, they were fantastic. And Sherry was like, Sherry is a good motivator too. I don't know if you ever seen him talk in the dressing room, but he can get you pumped up pretty quick. He's good at it as well. He coached in his day. So and one-on-ones, he would say all the things that you wanted to hear and some things that you didn't at some points, but he was fantastic. I liked Sherry a lot.
So in the fall of 91, the chance to go back to where Ted said you would be back to the following season. What do you remember of that season as it went along? Like, did you again reach that point where you're like, you know what Coach Nolan told us last year might just come true?
Yeah, well, there was a few things that changed that year, because we had lost Bugner, Tiley, and Foote, right? So those were three big defensemen that were phenomenal defensemen. But with Imber and Bannister and Mateer coming up, and we added a couple more, and Brian Gowdy, who was probably pound for pound the toughest guy I've ever met. But once we got those guys in training camp and we started to play, you could see that, well, these young guys, Ralph Intronuvo and Jarrett Reed too, and like, you could see these guys were already progressing. So their game had jumped up as well. And we started off pretty good. And we did have a little lax there at one point, I think. And we brought in Chris Simon, which was great to have Chris on our team. And he was really going through some stuff at the time, like just penalty wise and stuff. But I think Sherry and Ted got him down to where he was playing some good hockey and stuff. And yeah, we started to roll. We had a couple of hiccups in the playoffs against Kitchener there, the first round there. They took us 7 games, and North Bay took us 7 games. So it was a lot more difficult, I think, in the second run at her. But we were a good team. We were still a good team. We had Kevin Hodson in net too. So Kevin was a fantastic goaltender. So.
How did the fans in Kitchener treat you when you came back with the Sioux Greyhounds?
Actually, not too bad, actually. It's a funny story. My dad, who just passed away this year, he used to sit in section 20, and his friends used to give him the gears all the time about me, but I'd go out and score one or something like that, and he'd laugh at them. And Yeah, it was pretty funny. It was pretty funny there.
So your father would get it worse than you did on the ice.
Oh yeah, probably. Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
You mentioned Chris Simon.
Yep.
So Cy and Gowdy on the same team. I recall, and I think it was Mateer that said Teddy just liked to go out and get the toughest guy in all of Canada to play for
Yeah.
his teams.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was good. Gowdy was like pound for pound. Gowdy was the toughest player I think I've ever seen. Fighter, I guess I should say. He was tough too, and he was decent. And he was just a free agent pickup. He from the Manitoba, I believe. And yeah, he fit in real well with us. And of course Simon. We didn't want him to fight too much. We wanted him to play more, but his presence out there made everybody feel taller for sure. And yeah, he was good with Ralphie and I think it was Matsos on his line or Rick Kowalski. So yeah, they were an awesome line, and it was good to have Chris on the run for sure.
You mentioned after going 7 versus Kitchener early, you had to go 7 again this time versus North Bay in the final. How tough was that series?
They were a good team. They had some really good players, John Spaltor and that group. So they were a tough team to beat for sure. And it came down to the final game. I think they were all 1-goal games or overtime games. I'm not sure, but it was that was a grind against them. We were lucky to get out of that for sure. Yeah, they were good.
Tony Yubb told me that he had to tackle you once after an OT winner. Do you remember that?
Yeah, that was against Oshawa. Yeah. That was we were down 5-1 against Oshawa in the finals there the year previous, and our line played phenomenal that game. Actually, I think Tony had scored 1, and then I scored the third goal to make it 5-3, and then we scored. I think Colin scored another one to make it 5-4, and then we scored another one to tie it up, and it went into overtime. And the puck went back to the point, and I was just battling from the net against Dave Kravich. And our defenseman shot it, and it went off the backboards, came out to the other side of the net, and I wasn't really even looking. I just swung around, and it hit my stick and went in, and that was it. So it was probably the biggest goal I've ever scored for sure. I have the newspaper print of it still with Tony on my back. Yeah, and he was not a light man. Let me tell you, I was only about 170 pounds, so having Tony on my back wasn't pleasant, but it didn't feel a thing at that moment for sure.
That is fantastic. I love it. So you get through North Bay, all of a sudden it's back-to-back OHL championships, and then another chance at the Memorial Cup. I almost hate to bring it up, Deno, because we all know how that one ended. You're in the final this time, and with 14.6 seconds remaining, Kamloops gets the winner.
Yeah, it's unfortunate too, because we're on 4-on-2. So I think Ralphie was going down the wing and Simon was trailing behind him. And I think we had 2 other guys up a little farther. And the drop pass came back just a little too, kind of handcuffed Chris and went through his legs. And Scott Niedermeyer picked up the puck. Long pass, breakaway, scores. So yeah, we were pretty deflated on that one for sure.
So when I talked to Mark Mateer, he said that winning it the following year, obviously after having lost the previous 2, because he was there for all 3.
That's right.
He talked about guys like you. That was one of the other times that your name came up on our podcast. Colin Miller, all these other guys who were there and didn't get to ultimately climb that mountain when the Sioux hosted in '93. But he says they thought of you guys and the foundation, the building blocks that were there. How did you feel watching the Hounds win it the next
I was elated. I watched it. It was great. Those guys put in so much work, and Teddy and Danny and Sherry and the whole community of Sault Ste. Marie deserved that, like that, and to host it too, right? So, that was phenomenal to see. It was great. I'm happy for those guys to win it. I'm upset that I didn't win it, but I was there twice. Like, not a lot of people can say you were at the Memorial Cup twice. So, I was super happy for them, and they're all good guys. Like there's not one bad egg in that whole bunch, so Killer for sure, like Ryan or Rick Kowalski deserved that for sure. Like he had 3-game winners, I think, in Seattle. He was just playing phenomenal. He was the captain of that team, and he deserved that too. So those guys, they worked for it. They didn't get it for free. So they deserve whatever they get for sure.
Yeah, and you talk about going to two. Why not go to the two that your team is not hosting? So you get to go to Seattle, you get to go to Quebec City, see a little bit of North America, eh?
Exactly. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll take that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Where do you keep the championship rings?
I have them in, we have a little safe at home that I put them in there. When my kids were younger, they used to get into them when they were just out. So I put them in the safe. So they're still in the safe. And every once in a while I'll bring them out, but I don't wear them very often.
You talk about that community, Sault Ste. Marie, and how it had the chance to host in '93. It's hoping to host again in 2024. What would
Yeah.
you say about the Memorial Cup being hosted there again?
Well, I'd love to see it go back to Sault Ste. Marie. The new rink, I guess, is beautiful. So I haven't been yet. I did see something that you posted. You did a little tour of it there. So yeah, I think, look, it's just a great, great hockey city. The people there are fanatics. Like when we were playing Oshawa in '90, there was lineups overnight to get tickets for the first game. So, it's just a great, great hockey city. They treat all the players like gold. It'd be great to see them hosting again for sure.
You wouldn't have any trouble finding the new
Is
arena,
that right?
Deno.
It's in the
They built
same.
it. It's the same footprint. They just moved it like right next door on the parking lot. What used to be the parking lot is now the arena. So
Oh, is that right? Hey, good.
yeah, you'll
Doesn't
be
have
able.
the light. Doesn't have the light tower in the front though.
No, that part they did get rid of. They did get rid of it.
Yes. Yeah.
But you talk about that community too, and we were just up there recently, obviously,
Yeah.
and I got to thinking about it, and for a guy that works out of Kitchener,
Yeah.
sometimes I'll bitch and moan about, oh my gosh, I got to travel all the way to Sudbury, I got to travel all the way to North Bay, I got to go all the way to the Sioux. You guys, I mean, 3.5, 4 hour road trips were basically the minimum. We've got a 20-minute
Yeah.
trip that goes to Guelph as one of our road trips. I mean, there's nothing to complain about in other markets for sure.
Yeah. No, there were some grueling ones for sure, but they had scheduled it out. Like a lot of people don't understand this, but they scheduled it out. So like when we left Sault Ste. Marie and we were going, let's say, to the Ems division at the time, I don't know what it's called now, but the Ems division. So you'd play like Detroit, Windsor, London, Kitchener, and then come home. So you're down there for quite a bit. The only real long ones really were when you were going to like Niagara Falls or places like that, when you had to go, straight through right to Niagara Falls and that area. So, but you get used to it like fairly quick. Like the first couple of years, or the first year, I guess, you think it's long but the boys on the bus are having a good time. You're sleeping a lot, and they treat you pretty good on the bus, food wise, and you get used to it, I guess. And you come together as a team. Like if you're hanging out with buddies on your team for 8 hours, well, you're gonna get a group together, right, to gel together, and that's the way we were.
That's exactly what one of the players said to me when I was talking to him up in
Yeah.
Sault Ste. Marie when we were just there. And I thought of it as a junior hockey market too,
Yeah.
and it strikes me as, I mean, I know it's getting up there into northern Ontario, kind of the gateway to
Yeah.
the real north up there, the
Yeah.
farther north, like Thunder Bay and all that other stuff. But
Yeah.
it's the right size city where the Greyhounds are like the game in town. And you talk about those
Yeah.
overnight lineups for that series versus Oshawa.
Oh,
I mean, they
absolutely.
love their junior hockey up there.
Absolutely. Like even when we came back from Seattle and we didn't win, we still had a parade. Like they still put a parade on for us, and like thousands of people came out. Like it's just a great community, and they get behind you and they treat you so well. So um and the schools look after you really well, and it was just a great experience for me. I wouldn't change it for the world, to be honest with you. And I would tell any young hockey player that lives in Southern Ontario, don't put your nose up at the Sioux, because it's probably one of the best hockey markets you can go to. So
What was the arena that you least liked to play in as a visitor?
Windsor.
How did I know you were going to say that? How did I know?
We couldn't win in Windsor my second year there, and during the morning skate, Teddy brought out sweetgrass, and so we all got in a circle, and it's a Native American thing, and he lit the sweetgrass, and we got rid of the jinx, and we won that night. So because we couldn't win for the first couple of times we were there, and he's like, "We're gonna do something," and so this is what we did. So we did sweetgrass and put smoke all over everybody, and yeah, so it was pretty funny. No, I didn't like that. The fans were nasty fans in Windsor.
Yeah, that's and they're right on top of you in that old
Right on
barn
top,
too, right?
Yeah.
Where was the toughest place, or who was the toughest guy you had to play against?
Well, Lindros would be right up there for sure. Louis DeBrusque was one tough cookie. My rookie year, he was scary lining up against him. He was a left winger and I was a right winger. So, you lined up against Louis DeBrusque. He was, you had your eyes open there too. There was a lot of tough players back then. Holy smokes. Yeah, there was lots.
What a different
Hatcher, guys like that were tough.
Such a different era, eh? Like we could probably spend 10 minutes rattling off the names of these guys that were heavyweights that we used to call them. And I think we'll agree that the game is in a pretty good place right now, but
I agree.
Gosh, it's we're talking 30 years ago. What a difference.
Yeah, there'd be 4 or 5 guys in any team that could knock your head off pretty quick if you weren't paying attention. So yeah, it's a different game now. And like I watch my 15-year-old skate now, and he's 10 times the skater I was back then. So, the game has totally changed, but I think it's for the better. And they can still play tough now, but it's more skilled, and I think that's what it should be as well. Maybe back in the day, if it was more skilled, like I wasn't the most skilled guy, but I could skate a little bit, and I wasn't very big, so it might have suited my game a little bit more. But I liked playing back then. It was fun hockey to play. Like you played tough, but we were still good enough to to show some skill too. So the game is different, yes, but the hockey was still good back then, and the hockey's good now. So
you've stayed involved in it. You can't really get away from it, can you?
Well, So, well, no, I coached for a while. I coached junior B for a while here at Charlottetown, junior B for a while. And then I started coaching with my oldest fellow when he was younger, but I got out of it probably around Pee Wee. And I just decided that I wanted to watch. So I'm still involved a little bit with UPEI, the Alumni Association here. We have the best alumni at UPEI ever, if you want to plug that. Our alumni game every year draws about 60 guys. There's no other university in Canada that would draw 60 guys to an alumni game, I think. So yeah, we love our UPEI Panthers here. So I'm still involved a little bit in that, but I like watching my 2 young ones play. Yeah, the 15-year-old and the 11-year-old. Yeah, they're fun to watch.
That alumni game is so well attended, Deno, because everybody can't wait to get back to the island.
That's true. That's
right?
Possibly true. Or they're from somewhere else and have stayed here.
Kind of like you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a beautiful spot.
What took you down that way?
Well, that's a funny story too. So after Seattle, there was only going to be a couple. Well, you only had 2 overage spots, right? So I knew that Kevin Hodson was going to be a lock, and Rick Kowalski just came off 3 game-winning goals at the Memorial Cup, and so I knew the writing was on the wall, and so I just planned on going back to training camp. And about halfway through the summer, I called Bass and I said, Bass, I got a few universities looking at me. What do you think I should do? And he was straight up. He goes, Jason, I think you should go to university. And I thought the same too. And he goes, I can trade your rights and you can go somewhere else. And I think I ended up getting traded to Kingston, or there was a deal in place for me to go to Kingston. But I decided to go to university. So I had chances to go to Laurier, or I was thinking about going to Laurentian actually in Sudbury, because it was close to Sault Ste. Marie at the time, and I'd still had friends there. And then out of the blue, in I would say late July, UPI called me out of the blue. Billy McMillan was his name, who used to be assistant coach with the New York Islanders and coach of the Colorado Rockies. Anyways, he's an Islander here, and he was the coach. And he's like, "Yeah, we'd like you to take a trip down and see the place." And I said, "Oh, okay." And it was a free trip, and so I got on the plane and I came down to UPI, and I made. John Nelson was here. Jim Somez was here. A guy by the name of Dave Shellington was here, who played for Cornwall Royals. There was a bunch of guys here. KJ White, who played for Windsor Spitfires there. So they got off the plane. They met me there. They took me around for a few days, showed me around. And I just said, yep. I said, I love this place. It was a smaller school. The program seemed really good for what I wanted to do, and got back home, and I said to my dad, I said, let's find an apartment. So we found an apartment, and I had never been to the East Coast. I'd never been, this far east. So as soon as I got here, I just fell in love with it. It's the most beautiful place to live, I think.
It would be interesting to see, and I can understand the appeal, trust me, in July and August. What was your first winter in Charlottetown like, though?
It's really not that bad. Like if you look at the way the wind travels and whatever, we don't get, like, there's some winters that are bad, yes, but most, like, we have grass still here. We have green grass here. So some winters can be bad, yes, and it's a different cold. It's cold off the ocean, which is, it goes right through you, and the wind's usually high. So they can be fairly bad, but they're not any worse than they are in Sault Ste. Marie, I can tell you that.
Well, and I thought of that too. Like, this is quite the spirit of adventure you've got.
Yes.
So you get traded to Sault Ste. Marie, and then you're thinking, okay, maybe Laurier, which is back home, obviously, maybe Laurentian, which is close to Sault Ste. Marie, and all of a sudden, out of the blue, UPI comes around, and you're like, I'll take it.
It's funny how it works, but it just, when I got here and I met the people and I met the coach, and it was totally the right decision for me, and I'm glad I did it, and I've never left. So I've been here since '93, and I'll never leave, probably.
I'm not surprised, and we can tell, Deno, that you've never left, because I hear that Islander accent coming through clear as day. It's clear as day.
Ertl makes fun of me all the time. My accent has changed. I'm no longer from Ontario.
Absolutely. So you are officially a PE Islander, no question about it.
Well, not to the Islanders, because my name's Denomme, so there's no Denomes here other than me. So as soon as they hear the name, they'll say, "Well, you're not an Islander," right? So my kids are, though, so that's good.
That's for sure. And so now the Denomme family tree has begun on the island, right?
On the island, for sure. Yeah.
You get mixed up with that Billy McGuigan fella out there at all?
Oh, there's the odd time. We're on a group chat. There's a bunch of us on a group chat. Ertl and Billy McGuigan and John Nelson and Forby McPherson. And there's a group chat that we, Mike Harding from Peterborough there, and Dave LeMay. There's a bunch of us that are on this group chat, and it's, I'll never let you see it, but it's quite fun, and it's constant. It's basically 8 hours a day until everybody gets home, and then the next day another 8 hours. So it's quite funny. We have a few laughs and talk about some old stuff and talk about new stuff too. So it's great to connect. Social media is a great thing when it works like that, but not so good the other way. So we Billy's part of our chat. So
You know what? I agree completely with that way of looking at it when it comes to social media and how connected we can be. It's
Yeah,
fantastic for stuff like that.
yeah, yeah.
When
We're
you look,
smart about it too. Like the kids nowadays, they have to be taught, right? But we grew up with what to do and what to not to do, and yeah, so it's good for reconnecting with friends for sure. But I can see how it could be problems for the younger ones.
when you look back, I mean, these relationships, because you start listing off all of those names of guys that went through the Ontario Hockey League. So
Yep.
hockey and the relationships that you made decades ago continue to be the people that are in your life today. What does that tell you about the game?
Well, that's what it's all about, right? That's what sports all about, and that's what I tell my kids all the time. Like, what would you rather do? Would you rather do sports and meet new people all the time, create friendships, and things that you do together will last forever? And or do you want to sit at home and play video games, right? And not be social with people. It's such a great game to connect because it's a team game, right? So the team game, everybody's got to be a part of something, and that's what makes friendships.
Should we be watching for Denomme name coming up through the Quebec Major Junior League in the near future?
Who knows? We'll know this year, I guess.
I know now because you mentioned, yeah, 15. So I'll be having to watch closely.
Yeah, he's doing quite well. He's playing at the Mount here. So the Mount Academy is a prep school here, and he's doing really well there. So we'll see what happens.
If they tease you, Deno, on the island because of your last name, knowing that you're not from there, and Ertz back here in Ontario says because of your accent, you're no longer an Ontarian.
Yeah.
You also are sticking out like a sore thumb. For those not watching on YouTube, I'm gonna out Deno for the hat that he's wearing, but I thought they were all Habs fans down there, and you're wearing a Leafs cap.
I do that on purpose, Mike. So so yeah, most of my friends around here are Habs fans or Bruins fans, right? Because Boston's fairly close too. So I do it on purpose. And I have a Scotty Cameron who played at UPI too. He's from Ontario. Him and I are diehard Leaf fans, and we get people telling us all the time, don't go for the Leafs, and we're like, oh come on, we're good.
When you were a kid growing up in Kitchener, I mean, when you look back as being a kid growing up in Kitchener, could you ever have imagined where hockey would have taken you?
No, it's yeah. I feel like my life has been a little bit of Forrest Gump in a way. Just with the trade happening, out of the blue, like to be going to Sault Ste. Marie and then having the success there, and then coming to UPI and meeting a bunch of good people here. I'm very lucky, very lucky.
That just makes me think, and before I let you go, because you and I are basically the same vintage, you must have been going to the Kitchener Memorial Auditorium and watching Al MacInnis and Brian Bellows and Jeff Larmer and Wendell Young and all of the rest of them there win that first Memorial Cup for Kitchener.
I was there. Yep, I was there the whole time. My dad had season tickets. Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, and I don't think we had any choice except to become hockey fans and junior hockey fans when you grow up in a market like this.
No, it was awesome. I remember going to all the games. Sorry, I got a frog in my throat here. Walking around the top, the odd. I remember doing that all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned earlier about that little arena tour I did from Sault Ste. Marie. I did one at the Odd not too long ago either, and we can't do that at the Odd anymore. You can't walk all the way around the top. No, since the expansion, you can't get all the way around anymore. But
that's too bad.
Time marches on, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, listen, Deno, who cares what Ertz says? You can still be an Ontarian and a Kitchener boy on this podcast. Really appreciate you making the time and sharing some stories with me.
No, it was great, Mike. Thanks a lot. I love watching it and watching the old guys. So.
We are the old guys now. You know that, right?
I know.